Okay. Well, how are you today, Joe Black? Thanks for doing this.
I I am all right. It's a bit later for me than it is you. Lovely 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. It's the morning for you, so I've had a few hours of pottering around and doing what I needed to do. But am I the first face you're seeing today on this glorious Wednesday?
You are. I'm drinking my coffee. It's a good morning, so a little rainy here too. So, yeah, well, I was excited to see that series two, season two.
Yeah, well, I think we say series in the
Series.
US. They say season.
Okay. We'll go
I
with
can never.
series here.
I go with series because I think that's correct, but I will be corrected by other British people if I am wrong. But I don't think I am wrong.
Okay. Well, I was excited to see that you have series two of the podcast. How does it feel to be doing this all over again?
Good. I think I left it long enough that I forgot how much work was involved in making it happen. Um, and now pretty much every interview is done. Obviously, we've got a while, about 2 months of releases, but all of the hard bits is done, all the scheduling, all the research, all of that. Now it's the fun bit of getting people actually being able to hear it and see who the guests are.
Sure. Well, I listened to the Ben de la Creme one a couple
Uh-huh.
nights ago, and fun story. I've actually interviewed her a couple times
Mhm.
for other outlets, and I just loved how the conversation seemed so seamless between you two.
I mean, I think that's the benefit of I'm kind of only talking to people that I am a fan of, mostly. It kind of like bare minimum is that I need to be a fan of what they're doing. I don't want to do any interviews where I'm not genuinely invested myself because I think people can tell. I need to be excited to get other people excited. And Dayla I've known for a long time. So that always makes it easier when it's someone that you've been friends with for a little while.
Sure. And I love how you guys kind of cover funny stuff, like about your cats, and then also more serious stuff, like how, some drag race fans can be, which a lot of people might not realize. Um,
A lot.
yeah. Right. Now, Joe, if we can just kind of rewind for a little bit, before any of this happened, what made you decide to do a podcast in the first place?
Well, I think I wanted to I like delving into people's minds. I find them endlessly fascinating. And I think if you give people the room and the space to talk about things, I felt that because I like interview formats a lot because I think you can really pick up some interesting stories or ideas or inspiration. And there was sometimes that I'd listen to an interview and hope that someone would ask a certain thing, or I'd be curious to know something that wasn't covered, or maybe I had more questions based on answers they gave. So like kind of the easy answer is that I find people fascinating and I'd like to know more. But the kind of more in-depth one is that I wanted to ask the kind of questions that I wanted answered. And I think also I'm in a position, especially with someone like Dayla, where we can have conversations that uh Taylor with someone else may not be able to have, or me with someone else may not be able to have. So each individual guest I'll have some kind of. There's also generally a connection with the guest somehow of how we kind of intersect. So it was mostly to be nosy because I find people fascinating, but also to give them the kind of grilling that I wanted to give.
Sure. Now, out of, back to season one, out of all the different conversations that you had, was there any guest that, really said something that surprised you that you were like, oh my God, I had no idea about that?
The one that really sticks in my head is the Lemony Snicket one, where Daniel Handler is because I asked a question where I mean this is me, this isn't exact quotes, but I asked something along the lines of that I feel like their work, particularly with Serious Unfortunate Events, really spoke to sort of LGBTQI plus people, queer people, sort of neurodivergent people, and I asked why that was. And they said something along the lines of, to the outside world, I look like the man in the nice jacket, but actually I am all of these people. These are my community. This is what I grew up with, and this is who I am. So, I'm speaking to people like myself. And that really blew me away.
Sure. Okay. Now, Joe, what goes into making these episodes? Like, do you do them from home?
Yeah, I mean, mostly they're done from home via the medium of internet video calling software. Some of them have been in person. The Camille O'Sullivan one was recorded, as the air conditioning gives away, in a little kind of cinema camper van in the middle of a fringe festival site. The Dominic Skinner one was done in the Mac head offices, which was really fun to go there because no one else was there. I was just walking around the headquarters of Mac in London with Dom, and we did Mason's one in their partner's rented apartment in London. So while they were over in the UK, what other ones were done in person? Was that it? Yeah, mostly video conferencing software, but yeah, the ones in person they've got a different energy because you spend a bit more time with someone before or after. In the case of Dom, I was kind of like met outside the Mac offices and taken in with fancy key cards and things. Then afterwards we sat and had lunch and coffee for like 2 hours, which was really, really nice. And then Camille, we walked around Brighton for a few hours and had a little coffee and a chat. And I was scared with that one because we spent so much time together beforehand. With shopping, that's what we did, with vintage shopping. And I sat in the changing rooms and just Camille kept opening a curtain, going, "Do you like this one? Do you like this one?" I don't know. I feel like a cake. That one I was worried because we spent so much time together beforehand. I was like, no, don't ask too many questions now. And sometimes spending time afterwards, you think you then learn something about someone that you wish you'd asked, but the natural flow of conversation. I don't also like to edit very much. There's a couple of instances in series 2 where I've had to cut some stuff out, just because maybe we got a bit carried away or some technical issues, but generally everything is left as like one flow.
Okay. And I love the little intro that you include too, the little jingle,
Oh,
like
the theme tune.
theme tune. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I was sat. It was sort of just before the first episode was released, and I was like, right, I'm all ready to go. And then I sort of was putting it all together, and I was like, oh, I don't have a theme tune. So I just got up this little MIDI keyboard and just improvise something, and went, oh, that'd do. And then when the series 2 started again, I got a lot of messages from people going, I really missed that theme tune. And it was just the product of sitting there for like 5 minutes going damn, there we go. It was very, very, very off the cuff.
It's perfect. It's like very spooky but catchy at the same time.
Yeah, I wanted it to have a kind of creepy sort of haunted game show quality.
I love it. Now, Joe, with these episodes, have you found that maybe you got in new fans because of them? Maybe someone who likes Dominic or Lemony Snicket wanted to hear what they say on the podcast, and then they're like, "Wow, I really like Joe Black now."
The one actually that I noticed it more than others was with Jane Douglas and Ellen Rose from Outside Xbox and Outside Extra, because the gaming world and the sort of world of sort of the geek world, I guess, our pop culture geek world, and in their case, mostly games, has such a rabid fan base. And I mean, I've just started doing Twitch because as someone that enjoys games, but I was like, you feel guilty when you're doing it. And I was like, this is a way of communicating with people and creating nice little communities while also doing this fun thing. And also, times be tough for people. Give them, it's something free that people can watch and feel engaged in. And I feel like it's a little service. But that one particularly, I got lots of people following me based off of them because they've got such a real diehard, nice fan base that are very involved in what they do, and that is, in terms of actual listeners, that one remains one of the most popular I've done. And I thought, in my head, because it's so far from what I do for work, that I thought, it might be a strange kind of crossover. I didn't consider that people that like them will tune in as well. I'm only seeing it as from my point of view, and I also don't expect any of the guests to share it. You know what I mean? That's not, I'm not sending a contract in blood to be like, who must share this thing. Um, so that was a lovely surprise, is that I feel like people discovered them from me and people discovered me from them. So
Mhm.
that was the best one in terms of crossover I found.
Sure. Now, Joe, did you expect your guest to be, I guess, so willing to be part of the podcast? Because I mean, I know myself, I've been doing this kind of thing for years, and whenever someone says, "Yeah, I'll talk to you," I'm like, "Oh, really? Yay!"
Yeah, it's always a thrill, because I kind of go, I've got so and so. The Dawn French and Lemony Snicket one were the kind of, that was the most surreal ones for me, uh, purely because of being such a fan of who they are, and it's kind of a whole other world, a whole other league. The the Lemony Snicket one was a product of me feeling power mad after having Dawn. So Dawn said yes, and we had recorded it, and I was like, I've had Dawn French, I can have anybody. And then I just, on a whim, was like, I'm not going to get an answer. Sent a message to the Daniel Hand, the Lemony Snicket team, and got a reply in a couple of hours saying Daniel would love to do it. And then he turns out that he knew me, which was that sort of really took me back a little bit. When he was sort of familiar, which is quite a surreal moment.
Right.
But yeah, there is a, yes, like the short answer is that there is like a real lovely thrill, and I'm always so overjoyed. It's only an hour, or an hour and 15 with people, but that's an hour and 15 they could give to somebody else or be doing something else with their time. So I'm always delighted when they choose to spend that small section of a day with me.
Right. So now the episodes come out, is it every Thursday or Wednesday?
Every Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. Are you able, obviously, without giving anything away, just a hint or a preview of what people can expect for the rest of this series?
When does this come out?
I would say in the next couple of days. So the next one will probably be out by then.
Right. So, we've got the next episode, which will be out now, is a lovely British comedian. And we've got some pop stars. We've got some historians. We've got people from the world of heavy metal. We've got some people who are doctors of things. We have not medical doctors. Who else? I'm trying to think what I can say that doesn't give away too much. Some makeup artists, very cool, interesting performance art types. I'll try not to. It's hard because I want to be like, we've got blah, 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 blah. And there's a few that are yet to be recorded that I hope go ahead. Some acting royalty.
Very cool.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay. Well, I'm excited to see who everyone is. Now, Joe, just to pivot a little bit, if that's okay, in addition to this, I see you're always, announcing shows. You have a cabaret coming up in July. I would honestly just love to hear how you got into entertainment and just Joe Black as we see him today on stage.
Well, there's always that, I say this all the time, but there's that kind of ongoing joke that people who do cabaret are failed musical theatre people. Which for me, I never wanted to be a musical theatre person. It was never an intention, and quite unusually, my whole, like, not idea, but my goal was to do cabaret shows, which again is that kind of ongoing joke of people that fail at one thing end up in cabaret. No, but I always loved the format of it and the landscape and the platform it gives for art, and how so much can be encompassed in one show. And I used to do, when I first started performing, to make extra bits of money, I used to do street performance.
Oh,
So I used to sing songs on an accordion in, outside shops. And that kept, sort of 17 years old, playing an accordion with a white painted face, smeared lipstick and blacked out teeth in a bowler hat, was quite the sight for Portsmouth where I grew up. But the thing that kind of made me want to do stage shows was the Dresden Dolls, because I was a very alternative teenager. Surprise. And they kind of melded that theatricality and sort of cabaret sensibility with the kind of punk, alternative, gothy. And for me, it was a real indicator of that those two things or those two worlds can coexist. And nowadays, you look at any kind of sort of cabaret types, they were either a goth or still a goth. But at the time, teenage me didn't think if you were doing that kind of thing, it was very classic and proper, and you had to be this very clever person. You couldn't be this, chain smoke and drinking cider down the park, rough little punk kid. And they molded it for me, and it was just from there really that I would do. I was on mixed bill nights of bands, so I'd be doing like a cabaret set before a metal band. Which sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. Metal bands tended to work because I was sort of so ridiculous that people just go along with it. Rockabilly bands would always go terribly, real terribly. I've had bottles thrown at me at those ones. This was years ago, so we're talking about sort of, how old am I now? I've been doing this for 16 years now, so we're talking sort of 13, 14, 15 years ago that sort of bottles are being thrown. And then I sort of started doing burlesque shows as a sort of musical interlude act. And then more often, the hosts of the show would drop out or something would go wrong. And then as the only person that used a microphone on the lineup, they were like, oh, can you host? And I just started doing that. So it kind of, that helped build talking on top of the songs. And now it's like a nice blend of, like a full show would be a nice blend of storytelling and songs and anecdotes. Like I really love, I'm really going off on one now. I really love David Sedaris for unusual anecdotal stories. And I realized sort of before really, really getting into David Sedaris that I was kind of doing a similar thing where I was twisting things that had happened to make them more absurd. And listening to him is just, I pale in comparison to David Sedaris, but it's so inspiring to the kind of taking the mundane and make it fantastical. And I love doing that. Just sort of weird stories and chatting songs. So yeah, probably went off on one there.
Oh, go for it. Okay. And then I love how on YouTube as well, you're still doing different covers, like different songs and music videos.
Not very often.
Not very often, but occasionally.
I should do it more.
I particularly like the This Is Halloween cover as a Halloween fan myself. And given that this is pophorror.com, I have to ask, are you into like horror movies, scary stuff?
I am, yeah. Just a note on that. This Is Halloween. That
Sure.
one was really fun because I want to do it live at some point. But obviously the joy of recording something is that you can do it again if it goes wrong. But doing all of the voices was so fun because I'm not a classically good singer, but I'm a character. I can do character voices. So, rasps and growls are my kind of go-to for a standard song. But something like This Is Halloween is so fun because I'm just sort of able to go all over the place, from going like, I am the clown with the tearaway face, in a flash and gone without a trace, just sort of jumping. But to actually answer the question you asked, no, I do love horror. In fact, last night we went to go see Evil Dead. We didn't go to see it last night, but we recently saw Evil Dead Rise. And loved it, and then sort of went back and rewatched the other Evil Dead films.
Mhm.
And the second we watched Evil Dead 2 last night. And I love how horror just can be hilarious and horrifying, and it's one of the the only genres I think that can really be self-aware without ruining it. I think as soon as a rom-com or something becomes self-aware, that it almost just feels like a parody. But I feel like horror can be self-aware without becoming parody, but then it's also very parodiable. Things like Scary Movie and that kind of thing. And it's just a fascinating genre. And what I love about horror is it seems to attract just such wonderful people that are really passionate about this thing, and again at once can really love something so silly and ridiculous like Evil Dead 2, just because that's fresh on my mind, something so ludicrous as that, but also something that is a genuine fright fest, and have as much love for both. And I think there's something about a kind of horror fandoms that it's so intense and loving. I mean, you write for pop horror, so is that's correct, isn't it? That's not just an odd observation from me.
It definitely is. I don't know if you've ever been to like a monster convention or anything like that. The people are so nice there.
I've been to Comic-Con,
Yes.
and everyone was very nice, though we didn't really dress up, and then people kept coming up to us and just guessing who we were dressed up as, and I was like, no, these are just our clothes. And I remember this young man came up and just kept saying American Horror Story. We're going, no, but American Horror Story. I'm really insisting. I was like, no, these are just my day clothes, just my clothes in the daytime. Comic Cons are really fun, though, and also I like going to them and then after the fact realizing I met somebody that's from something really big. Not in the kind of meet and greet format, but like we walked past. This is pre Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. We walked past Michelle Gomez, and I'm not a Doctor Who person. So I fell in love with her as Lilith in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. And she walked past us and she was like, "You two look fantastic." Like that. Oh, thank you. And then she left, and I said to Aaron, I was like, "I'm sure I've seen that woman in a meme." Like, I think it was like, what sex are you, evil? What's beneath your pants? Darkness. Or it was something like that. But things like that. And we met Holdor, just walked past us and sort of went. But then also you get the fun stuff of seeing like Famke Janssen looking miserable at a table. And she wasn't miserable. I think that's just her face, but she's beautiful. I've never seen someone look so like they didn't want to be somewhere, but also so gorgeous at the same time.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. What was I going to ask you? Do you have a favorite scary movie
Mm.
in general?
Ooh. I mean, I'm particularly fond of Hellraiser because that was one of the ones as a kind of teenager. It had kind of a lore around it. Do you know what I mean? When you're sort of 13, 14, bit of a goth, when they go, oh, it's all really gory and there's sex and darkness and it's also goth and leather and fetish. And then as an adult, you look back at it and you go, this is homoerotically charged. Blessed be Clive Barker. So I'm particularly fond of Hellraiser. I love The Shining. Stephen King's got so much work. I couldn't even scratch the surface of all the stuff he's done. Like that a lot. It, of course, is very nice. We've recently sort of delved back into the Universal monsters, which in hindsight is not that, not very scary. It very much leans into the camp factor, but I'm sure in 1934 some of this was terrifying. What was it? I think we recently watched The Wolfman, and there's a bit that me and my boyfriend Aaron keep doing, where there's someone on it. Again, this is the kind of thing about horror being sort of absurd and maybe self-aware and very campy. And there's this woman sat on the sofa, and he's like, "Okay, I'll be back in a minute." And then he looks at it and he just turns the light off on her and leaves the room. But just in this house, just leaves this woman sat in the dark. So now when we leave rooms, I'll go, "I'll be back soon," and turn the light off and walk out of the room. yeah, so yeah, classic Universal horror monsters for maybe not the right reasons, but also things like, I guess, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and that can be considered a horror, despite I don't think being particularly scary. But again, for 19, what was it, 1920? I can't give years. Terrifying, I'm sure.
Right, right. Hey, oh, and I did have to ask you because you mentioned it in the Ben Delacreme interview, The Last of Us. You've seen it. What did you think?
Oh God, I loved it. I'm yet to play the games, but that was maybe quite nice for me, is that I had nothing to hold it against. Um, so it was kind of a fresh experience for me. I just knew that people loved it, and I found it really, really. It was touching, and the only thing I would say is that more of the they're not called zombies, are they? What are they called in it?
Oh God. I know one's called the Clickers.
Yeah, there's the clickers,
There's another one though.
but the there is this sort of overarching name for them. But they're not zombies. There's something else. But I know I really loved it, and I thought, I mean, it's maybe we watched The Mandalorian as well, but it's made us sort of fall in love with Pedro Pascal. And then what's the his companion, the actor's name? Bella
Bella.
Ramsey. Fantastic. They were absolutely brilliant. And I'm so excited for season two. And I'm sort of, I don't think I want to play the games because I want that fresh experience. And like I said in the Ben de la Creme interview, the podcast that they did alongside it was, as a companion piece, was, I don't tend to do that kind of catch up things or generally, but that one felt very special because it was the creators of the show and the game talking about it. So you kind of, like I said to, I don't know if I said this to Ben. No, I said to Ben about how it got made, but one of my other favorite things about it was they spoke about how and why changes were made within it. Because I mean, that's, I guess, one thing with kind of fandoms of things is people can really cling on to certain aspects and go, but why did they change that? And what was so nice about this is they explained why things were changed, because it was geographical reasons or logistic reasons or time within the time frame of how they would get from A to B and how you tell that story. And I thought that was fascinating. Same with the Sandman when that came out. I loved all of the Neil Gaiman kind of Q&A things where they explained why things were different and everything made sense. Things like, why doesn't Morpheus have black eyes? It's because it made them look too unreal, so therefore it's harder to connect with them on camera, and then you lose some of the emotion. It's just nice things like that. So again, that's why I love the sort of interview format, is because you learn things about the person or the project or the thing, and I think it can give it a deeper appreciation.
Definitely. Hey, trying to think what else. I think Zoom is going to start yelling at us.
Actually, I've just
Yeah,
remembered something. Just
sure.
on the subject of horror and learning about things and making you appreciate them more. There was a BBC series with Mark Gatiss called A History of Horror. Again, obviously you're based in the US, and I think it's on YouTube. I don't know how legally it's on YouTube, but if you search for History of Horror Mark Gatiss, I'm sure it will pop up. And that's what made us go back to all the Universal classic monsters, is Mark Gatiss sort of delved into sort of his favorite ones and explored that, and that's what made us revisit them and find that new appreciation for it. Mark Gatiss, how familiar are you with Mark Gatiss?
Not much.
No. Okay, did you see the BBC Dracula, the 3-part?
No.
No. So it's the origins of Dracula, all the kind of classic Jonathan Harker part, and then there's the Demeter. That's how it's said, isn't it? The boat, and then there's modern day, and it's three episodes. And Mark Gatiss is a comedian and writer, an actor, and it loves the horror genre. So he's originally with a sketch troupe called the League of Gentlemen, which is a very, very British off-color very dark comedy. And then he wrote Sherlock as well with the Benedict Cumberbatch. He plays the head of MI5 or something. Like I really watched Sherlock, but yeah, he's just sort of all round sort of good writer, but does quite a lot of horror, man. And I think if people aren't familiar with listening to this, go look up Mark Gatiss's work, because it is the gift that keeps on giving. Everything he does, I think, why is this man in my brain?
All right, well, I'll have to look him up after this. All right, well, Joe, we have about 8 minutes left before he
Mhm.
kicks us off. I love the question that you asked Vandella Creme at the end, just kind of, what do you want next? What are your dreams? And I kind of want to ask you the same thing.
One of the someone else I interviewed um asked me the favorite things thing, and it took me off guard because I've got so used to just asking other people this question. I haven't actually thought about an answer for myself, but then again, I don't give them a chance to think of an answer before I ask them. um Dream thing, I think ultimately I want to keep curating things that I'm passionate about and inspire me and can hopefully inspire other people. Because a lot of things I've seen that have given me that eureka moment, that first time of, not the first time seeing the Dresden Dolls, but the time that I saw the Dresden Dolls, that just sparked something within me that went, I'm going to do shows. Um, to keep cultivating things that can keep people's juices flowing, as it were, not necessarily in creative juices, just the podcast is a nice way to do that because it's just conversations and it's accessible. And I've started doing these Twitch streams, and again, I'm having these nice conversations with people. I mean, the dream goal would be to have if I'm being unrealistic, would be to own a cabaret club, really. But I'm not very good with paperwork, to be honest with you, so I don't know about opening a venue.
Oh, no.
But but I deeply love the art form of cabaret. Um, and very much like a chat on a podcast, it's a platform and a scope to hear and see things that can be inspiring or to inspire the person doing it. Because the cabaret show can be joyous, it can be sad, it can be political, it can be irreverent, it can be so many things. So I guess the dream is to keep on keeping on, maybe. I think that's a good answer.
Dream. Um, and then I did also want to ask, because you mentioned earlier on, the whole point of the podcast is for you to find out stuff that, you wanted to ask stuff that other people haven't asked. So is there
Mhm.
a question that I haven't asked or other interviewers haven't asked that you would love to be asked?
The past few years have been an absolute blur, to be honest with you. Uh, Sometimes people ask stuff that kind of take me off guard, not because it's bad, but because it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I think my favorite kind of questions, and I'm sure I've answered it, is kind of, I like when they sort of go, so why do you do what you do? Because I think that really it gets to the heart of something. And I think people, rather than asking them about a specific thing, if you just sort of ask why, that's my sort of favorite. I'm sure I've been asked it before, but I think I've kind of answered that, haven't I? About the sort of, I don't think maybe they've not asked that directly. Just gone, why do you do this?
So, well, it has been a pleasure. Was there just any final words that you wanted our readers to know?
Stream my single Final Curtain. It's been out for ages, but I'll take any opportunity to plug it.